The Serpent Cult Excerpt. The interior of the lighthouse, now visible through the open doorway, appeared rather dark at first. On closer inspection, dim light could be seen filtered down from above. Not a sound came from beyond the doorway. The lighthouse appeared to be deserted. Lloyd stepped forward and drew his swords. "I'll go first." The others followed, filing one by one through the open doorway. Glow went next, then Axel, with the three sisters in the rear. They found themselves in a circular room, with the base of a staircase directly across from them. On either side of the stairs was a door leading further back into the lighthouse. The staircase wound its way up inside the wall of the lighthouse to the lantern room far above. The top of the stairs was hidden in shadows, barely visible to even the keenest of eyes. Axel spoke in a hushed voice. "Let's be care." Before he could finish, Maya danced past all of them out into the center of the room.
"Oh, this is big,"
she cried, twirling around with delight. Her voice echoed off the walls, sounding fainter and fainter as it traveled up the empty chamber. The eerie sound drew Glow's attention to the dark shadows far above. Did something just move up there?
"Maya, get back here,"
he heard Vess cry, but Glow's eyes were locked on the upper stairwell. Abruptly, something appeared out of the darkness. It was whitish gray and semicircular. It was also getting bigger. Abruptly, the realization hit him. It was a stone.
"Look out!"
Glow yelled, pointing upward. To his horror, more stones fell into view. Lloyd immediately spurred into action. The young warrior spun around and vaulted toward Maya, but he was too late. The rain of stones had already reached them. A few hit the floor with loud thuds, but one in particular caused Glow's heart to jump into his throat. A stone the size of a human head headed straight for the little girl. "Maya!" he cried instinctively, reaching out for the girl. Time appeared to slow. Maya spun around to face him, a quizzical expression on her face. Lloyd continued to plow forward, closing on the young girl. The stone sped toward the unsuspecting target. Just before Lloyd could reach her, the rock connected with the little girl's shoulder. Glow felt a sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach. He cringed, expecting to see Maya's shoulder shattered. Yet, instead of crushing her side, the large stone shattered into pieces. Glow's eyes went wide. What the? Before he could finish his thought, a small gray blur slammed into his outstretched arm. Pain lanced up his limb and into his shoulder. It felt as if he had been hit with a hammer. Glow dropped his arm and grasped it with the other hand. At that same moment, Lloyd reached Maya and scooped her up off the floor. He cradled the little girl in his arms and kept on going toward the back of the lighthouse. Glow watched through a haze of pain as the duo hurtled across the room. Stones continued to rain down on them, Lloyd shielding the little girl with his body. At that moment, Glow caught a glimpse of Maya peering over Lloyd's shoulder. She was giggling. Lloyd's mouth fell open in astonishment. He stood there paying little heed as stones continued to fall around him. Abruptly, strong hands grabbed him from behind and pulled him against the lighthouse wall. The owner of those hands were pressed against the wall next to him, still grasping his good arm. It was Vess. "Stick to the wall," she hissed. Glow's senses suddenly returned to him, and he nodded his understanding. Vess let go of his arm and motioned for him to follow, then slid along the wall toward the back of the room. Glow trailed close behind. Across the room, Lloyd had reached one of the doors at the back of the lighthouse. Still cradling Maya in his arms, he placed his shoulder against the door and pushed against it with his body. There was a cracking noise followed by the door swinging open. Lloyd and Maya then disappeared inside. Glow suddenly remembered Axel. A quick glance backward confirmed that his friend also hugged the wall. Axel and Ruka slid along a few feet behind him. It didn't take long for all of them to reach the open door. Glow paused as the others ducked through the doorway. The rocks had stopped falling and everything had gone quiet. Glow closed his eyes and reached out with his mind, swiftly making contact with Raven. She flew around the island, enjoying the company of a flock of gulls. Glow directed her to fly past the top of the lighthouse. Perhaps she could get a good look at who or what was throwing rocks down on them from up there. Glow opened his eyes and peered into the open doorway. It was dark beyond the entrance, the only light coming through the open door. He lifted his arm to light his staff. That was a mistake. Pain shot up from his shoulder. Glow grimaced but continued on, finally managing to get the staff lit. He blinked briefly as his eyes adjusted to the bright light. They were in a small room, surrounded by boxes and crates piled up to the ceiling. Lloyd stood in the center of the room, still holding Maya in his arms. Vess and Ruka stood to one side with Axel on the other. When Maya saw Vess, she began to giggle hysterically.
Did you see it, Vess? He rescued me.
Lloyd gently placed the young girl on her feet, a puzzled expression on his face. Maya proceeded to fall on the floor and have another fit of giggles and snorts.
That was very gallant of you,
Vess told Lloyd, ignoring her little sister. Her demeanor was visibly softened, once again appearing to be the friendly young woman they had met on the beach.
Yeah, it actually was,
Ruka added. From her tone, it was clear she had not expected such gallantry. Lloyd turned a bright shade of scarlet. It was nothing. Anyone would have done it. Ruka's mouth twisted to the side.
Ha! Not from what I've seen. That was almost heroic.
She stared intently at Lloyd, as if reevaluating her opinion of him. Through all of this, Maya still rolled on the floor, giggling uncontrollably. Glow could not fathom her reaction. Unless she knew she was never in any real danger. That large stone should have crushed her shoulder. Even Lloyd would have had a hard time shrugging that off. Glow was thankful that Maya had not been hurt. But there was far more going on here than met the eye. He watched intently as Vess knelt down beside her sister. She grabbed the little girl by her arm and said,
Maya, compose yourself.
Maya stopped rolling. She sat up and wiped the tears from her eyes. She tried, rather unsuccessfully, to suppress any further giggles.
Now let me see your wound,
Vess said, emphasizing the last word. She proceeded to examine the little girl's shoulder. From what Glow could see, it looked completely fine. He cast a glance at Axel. The gnome almost imperceptibly shook his head. Glow arched an eyebrow. If Maya was fine, then what was Vess playing at here? The Serpent Cult Excerpt. Written by F.P. Spirit. Narrated by Alexander P. Wender.